Hello, my name is Rebecca and welcome to this video. Today's video is going to be a wrap up of all of the books that I read in August, and I did read a diverse set of books this month that I'm pretty excited about. So let's dive right in. The first book I read this month was actually for a book club that I'm in, and this book is Go as a River by Shelley, and this book setting is in 1948 Colorado on a family peach farm. The main character is a teenage girl named Victoria Nash, and she's really sheltered, but she decides to kind of create her own path for herself when she meets a mysterious stranger on the road. This story is really a story of loss, of heartbreak, and of creating a new beginning for yourself. A lot of kind of generational trauma, things like that. What I really liked about this book was that it was really, really beautifully written. You definitely could feel the emotions of all of the characters, and I really was rooting for the main character, Victoria, throughout the whole book. Some things I didn't like, it was like pretty freaking slow. Definitely the first third of the book was like very, very slow. So if you're currently reading the book, it does get like quite a bit quicker as you read. It does take a while to get through, and then because of that, it felt kind of almost like two different books. Like there's the beginning part and the end, and the second kind of half, or like maybe the end third of the book, and those definitely felt a lot different to me. But generally, like the book, it was a good book to read. It's very like lyrical kind of book. I gave it 3 stars. The next book I read was a nonfiction book about MLMs, kind of a cult-ish book if you've read that book before. And this book is Hey Han by Lynn Paulson, and she actually was an insider in an MLM. She doesn't name the MLM, but she was kind of one of the highest earners. She got like a car, she got all this stuff. She was like kind of on the top. So she had that inside perspective of MLMs, and this really talks about like feminism and how that kind of intersects with like MLMs and anti-MLM perspectives. One thing I thought that she brought in a really interesting way was like her own alcoholism and how that also intersected with MLMs and MLM culture. Parts that I didn't like as much was, and this is a little bit hard because it is basically a autobiography, but she was in the MLM for like a very long time, knowing that it was, hurting other people, hurting people that she cared about, and still kind of like, let that be. I mean, she was honest about that, but at the same time, it felt kind of weird towards the end of the book of like, oh, she's still like getting a ton of passive income through this, and was also saying that's like not a great thing. So that felt a little icky, but at the same time, like she was honest about it in her own book. So it was a hard one there. And I also wish there was a little bit more research in this book, just because it was marketed like the book Cultish, which had a ton of research in it. This one had less. So I wish she did a little bit more research, specifically like journal articles. I think when people think about research, they're like, just another book. But other books, it's just people's opinion. So actually going into like the actual research articles and journals would have been better. But yeah, I still really, really liked it. I gave it 3.5 stars. I thought it was a good, solid book. If you like cults and that kind of thing and scams, I think you would like this book. This next book is my first spooky-ish book of the fall season, and that is Ghost Wall by Sarah Moss. And just look at this freaking cover. It's beautiful. It's also a very short book, so if you just need a short book to get you in that spooky mood, I think I read it over like a weekend trip, so it was pretty easy. This is a short and harrowing tale of Sylvie, who's a teenage girl who goes with her, more specifically father, but also mother, to orchestrate this basically like university class, anthropology class, on this like camping trip to pretend to be ancient Britons, because this is based in Britain, which I also found kind of interesting. But they are just like pretending to be like quote unquote cavemen during this time. But a part of that is that these people who they're trying to reenact created these ghost walls to protect themselves where they had human sacrifice. So that's where it gets kind of spooky. And I won't give away too much at all for this one just because there's not a lot there. But I really enjoyed this book. It wrote about classism in Britain and gender roles and things like that in a really interesting way. It wasn't preachy, but it did kind of interweave that within the story, which I really enjoyed. And I gave this 4 stars. Next book I really enjoyed for more like personal, for my own personal reasons, because it was based in Santa Cruz. There was this really cute romance with like this marine biology professor, and I'm from Santa Cruz if you didn't know. So, and I love whales. Yeah, so I felt like this book was kind of written for me. This book is A Very Typical Family by Godfrey, and I believe that this is actually her first book that she has written. The plot of this book is about the central character, Natalie Walker, who is the reason why her older brother and older sister went to prison over 15 years ago, and she has since been estranged from her family until a letter comes in the mail telling her that her estranged mom has died, and she has left this like the family Victorian mansion in Santa Cruz to her and her siblings, but only if they can all meet together in this mansion in Santa Cruz. The main plot of this book is the resentment, guilt, shame of what Natalie did to kind of put her siblings in prison, and whether or not they're going to forgive her, and trying to look for her brother because they cannot find her brother. But the kind of subplot is like really, really, really cute, nerdy romance that I'm just like, oh, it's like, I'm not even like a typical romance person, but this romance was so freaking cute. I loved it. I love like intellectual romance when they're both either like researchers or something like that, or just like nerding out about something. So I really enjoyed this book. I don't think it is for everyone. It is a little bit cheesy, but I did give it 5 stars because it was just like all the little things that I love. This next book is a villain retelling of a classic Indian story, the Ramayana, and that is Kaikeya. This cover is amazing, but basically to tell you what this is about, Kaikeya is the only daughter of a king in a small kingdom in India, and when her mother, the queen, is banished, she kind of learns that she has these like magical, mystical powers. She eventually becomes a warrior and a very influential queen in another more powerful kingdom. I had a lot of mixed feelings about this book. I really enjoyed the background information. I really enjoyed her childhood, her brothers, kind of basically like the first half or even the first 2/3 of the book. I did feel like towards the end, it did feel kind of forced of like why we should be rooting for this character and why she did what she did, because it's based on this old story where she was kind of this villain queen who like banished basically this prince who was supposed to become the king, and he was, you know, a really good guy. It didn't really come together for me. I also didn't know who she was writing for. If she was writing for more of a Western audience, I do think a little bit more context would have been better. And if she was writing for more of an Indian audience, I do think that there were some mistakes made that weren't as accurate to the original story. But that being said, I did give it 3 stars. I would have given it more if there were those changes made, but I still think that a lot of people would really, really like this book. I just am a little bit picky when it comes to some of these types of things. But this cover though It's amazing. It's great. This next book is great for people who read Goosebumps as a kid and now watch Black Mirror. And this is Cursed Bunny by Bora Chung, and this is translated from Korean, so this is a Korean, not novel, it's like short stories. I will give huge trigger warning. The first story is extremely grotesque and pretty disgusting, but the other stories after that are much, much less disgusting. And they're really interesting. It's very Black Mirror. Some are more like fantasy, some are more sci-fi, and some are just horror. I really enjoyed this book. I think it's great for the fall. It's also really nice because they are short stories. You can kind of pick one that you're feeling. You don't have to just read through the full book. And look at this cover again. I love scary bunny books. I also love the book Bunny if you're looking for a really creepy book. And I gave this 4 stars. The last book that I read this month was super, super hyped, and I think that's also why I'm a little bit more critical of this book. But this book is Fourth Wing, and this is a military academy dragon romance fantasy book, basically heavy on the romance, more like romance in a fantasy setting kind of book. And this book has been talked about everywhere. And it's kind of a love it or hate it book. And I felt kind of both ways about it. It was really fast and fun to get through, but towards the end I was kind of like a little bit over it. But I do see why people like it. I personally did not like this book that much. I think the dragon characters were really, really fun and interesting. I wanted more of that. I could read a whole book if it was just the dragons. I think that would be fun. The humans, not so much. Some issues I had with this book is that it needed so much more world building. I did not understand the motivation of these characters. I did not understand, basically these characters are being put in this kind of like Squid Game situation where like most of them are just gonna die in a very painful death. And I didn't really understand why they would put themselves in this kind of situation. And I think if there was a little bit more context or world building at the beginning or the beginning part of the book, it would at least make me more invested in these characters, because it was like Squid Games. These characters died like left, right, and center. And it was just really odd to be like, this person died, quirky remark, then like 5 other people die, and then like looking, oh, this guy is so hot and so cute. And it was just like a weird but ping pong of like mass death to like romance, sexual tension. So that was very odd for me. The romance it felt very Twilight. This would have been, and I think, and other people have said this is like a YA, like a young adult fantasy novel, if not the sex scenes, the smut scenes towards the end. Because this felt very Twilight to me, like the romance felt Twilight, felt a little bit like Hunger Games, but then there were these like random sex scenes as well. So it was a little bit discombobulated, but I will say towards the end when it was finished, I was like, okay, then when the next book comes out, I'll probably read it. So she's gonna make a lot of money off of this. It was fun, but there were a lot of issues. I hope maybe in the next book, she is able to add maybe a little bit more context to the story, or like build out this world a little bit more. And I gave Fourth Wing like 2.5 stars for all those reasons. Thanks so much for watching. Let me know if you've read any of these books and what your thoughts are. If they're different from mine, that's totally fine. This is just my opinion, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.